Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm here live. We're on Twitter/X, YouTube, and also on Instagram. I'm terrible at Instagram Live, but I'll do my best. So I'm gonna talk through the UHSAA ruling. So if you got any questions, please, drop them in either on the comments on I think on YouTube or right here on IG. So I was there. I was at the UHSA meeting. I got to speak for 2 minutes, which I said was a terrible idea for a former Baptist preacher to only get 2 minutes. And I was in that room for a while today. It was a solid 4 hours. Me and AJ Jackson were there. There was a whole bunch of media. There were some students from Judge, from Layton Christian, from St. Joseph's, and they had a whole conversation about, for a long time, there was a conversation about the transfer rules. So I'll go through the transfer rules, what's their board of trustees, that's what it is, what the board of trustees decided to pass, what the F1 visa ruling was and what they decided to pass. Now, what they in fact passed is what they are going to send to the member schools of UHSAA, which will then require a 2/3 majority in order to get ratified. Is it probably going to get ratified? I think so. I think that's probably a pretty good idea that it's going to get ratified. So first of all, and then after that, if people are still sticking around, I do have some updated club standings that I've been able to pull, and so we can just go through how some of the clubs are doing. Like I said before, if you want me to share about your club and talk about it, please, you got to send me your scores, because between exposure and the whatever random apps are out there, I'm not just going to sit here and go through and try to comb everything. So I've got a whole bunch of teams, and I'm happy to kind of talk through them. By the way, I have 2 cameras. So I got camera 1, camera 2. So I'll kind of keep looking back and forth at them. Okay. So first of all, the transfer rules that were passed. I thought, and I said this before when I went to the executive committee meeting, I thought this was a pretty good idea. Because they had over 150 different transfer requests, they wanted to make it, kind of relatively easy for, hey, Matthew Hilliker. They wanted to make it relatively easy for kids to be able to, or easier for kids to be able to transfer, but also not have to, I don't know how to say this nicely, lie about why they were transferring, right? So what the rule states is, if you played any sport, so let's say you played at my son plays football and basketball for Judge, and this is not happening. It's not breaking news. Let's just say he wanted to transfer to a different school. Matthew, we're talking about UHSAA transfer and F1 visa immigration rules. Very exciting stuff. For a lot of people, this is actually really important. So let's say he wanted to transfer. He would have to sit out, and it was for just a reason. He was just going to move, right? He's just going to leave, and we were going to stick around. He would have to sit out the first half of the football season, all right? And he would also have to sit out the first half of the basketball season, because he played both sports at a varsity level within a 12-month period. And I apologize, by the way. I've been kind of under the weather. I really wanted to get this out before I totally crashed tonight. But I think this is really important. So he would have to sit out the first half of the year, and can just transfer. So the first one is not free, but the first one you get to go, and you just have to sit out the first half, or 30 days, whichever is longer. Now, they did crack down on some other things. So, for example, the guardianship, right? Like they brought this thing up that there are guardians that had like 7 or 8 people that they were legal guardians of in their house. And so what they changed to kind of close that loophole is they said, all right, if you have legal guardianship change, but your parents are both, or one or both of your parents are still alive, and there has been no evidence of neglect or abuse, then it's denied. You can't transfer for guardianship, and then you have to sit out the first half of the year. So I thought that was pretty important to know. They also tightened down the bullying and harassment reasons for transferring. So um, if you're going to claim that you were bullied or harassed, then both schools have to essentially ratify or agree that some level of investigation has occurred. There was some conversation around UHSAA cannot know, who the bullying parties are or who was going on specifically. That's kind of outside of my level of expertise, as is most stuff. But um, the important thing is you can't say, "Hey, I was bullied and I want to leave," and they won't rubber stamp that, right? Like you have to have some proof. Same with a full family move. There has to be a pretty good level of proof that there has in fact been a change of residence for your entire family, and you'll have to submit that through Register My Athlete if that's what you're claiming. Of course, if a school shuts down, if a program shuts down, military transfer or move, kind of the other ones, those will all stay in effect. So you can transfer for any of those kind of reasons and be good to go. But if you're just going to transfer because, I don't know, your girlfriend goes to another school, then just go do it and sit out the half the year. Don't go and make something up or think that you're being, super smart about it. So those were the transfer rules. Like I said, I thought, hey, pretty good. I think it's a pretty good transfer rule. If you have any questions about any of these things, please drop them in the comments, and I'm happy to take a swing at it and see if it's something that I can help address. I'm certainly not an expert, but I did sit there. I went to both meetings. I did listen. I didn't read an article, on Deseret News or KSL and reporting on it, right? I was in the room. So decent source for this stuff. And again, I apologize for the sickness. Okay. So the one that I think was the most harsh, and this is my opinion, but it was just hard to listen to, is the ruling on students who are here on an F1 student visa. So if you don't know, there are a multitude of reasons why a student would be in Utah or in the United States on an F1 student visa. Of the hundreds or so students who are here, who are already here on an F1 student visa, the UHSAA has no power to just take that away from you, right? You're not banned from going to school or anything like that. But the UHSAA was concerned that they kept kind of dancing around it, but it seemed like the primary concern was that LCA won the state basketball title this year and that they had a whole bunch of F1 student visa players on their roster. That seemed to be the thing that people were pretty frustrated and concerned with. And then also there was the article from, I think it was KSL, the investigation around F1 student visas at Juan Diego. And so all this sort of culminated, and talking with some of the board members, it's been sort of percolating for a while. And they were like, we have to do something. Well, if there are students who are on here and you are watching this or you are listening to this, know that just doing something isn't always a great idea. I totally agree, Tim. Just get better at basketball. So I got to speak to the board, and I shared that exact same thing. I said, hey, listen, when I was a head coach at Intermountain Christian School last year, we lost a game to Waterford 55-9. 55-9. We lost a home game to Waterford. And my answer to the team was not, hey, we got to level the playing field here. We only had 6 available players. And so maybe next time when we play, we can get UHSAA involved, and they can make sure that the teams that we play only have the 6 players that I pick out. By the way, I get to pick out there's 6 players, and that's going to make a level. Nope, I did not say that. I said, looks like we got to get better at basketball, just like my friend Timothy Drisdom said. I won't go full government name on you, Tim. That's what I said. We had to go get better. And then this year, when AJ was playing football for Judge, we played Layton Christian Academy in football. And there was a left tackle, probably 6'7", 6'8", 260. And the first play, he just came off the line, and boy, oh boy, he pushed AJ back so far. And after the game, I didn't say, well, boy, we better go talk to UHSAA and see how we can get this kid out of here so that you can be a better football player. I was like, nope. Looks like you got to get stronger. You got to get faster, because this is what sports teaches us. I ask that they not rule in favor of this, because I think it sends the wrong message to are student athletes in Utah. And that message is this, and this was sent loud and clear by this vote. Make no mistake about it. They told you and you, whatever camera, they told you as a student athlete, you are not good enough to compete. And I think that's wrong, because I think, what's up, Corey? This is Utah stuff. You can hang out. I mean, maybe it'll come to Colorado. I don't know. But they told you that you are not good enough to compete with international players, whatever the sport, lacrosse, volleyball, basketball, soccer. They said, we need to step in and we need to make sure that you don't have to compete with the best on the international stage. And I don't think that's right. I also don't think it's right to tell kids like Solomon, who lives right here in my house and goes to judge. I don't think it's right to tell him, you can't play only because of your immigration status. The kid is here legally, right? He's here in the States. He's a legal resident of the United States. He had to go through a process to get here. He's away from his family. He's away from his friends. He's getting an education. And we just told this kid, listen, you are not welcome to participate at the highest level of athletics that you can because of your immigration status. And I don't think that's right either. I really don't. Now, there's a great poem called The Man in the Arena. LeBron, not the greatest player of all time. Sorry, everybody. Sorry, but he's not the greatest of all time. Go Nuggets. But LeBron writes like Man in the Arena on his shoes. It's a great poem. It talks about how being the critic is easy. And in this case, I am the critic. And I understand that it's easy to be the critic. And it's difficult to be in that room. I even prayed for everybody in that room that they would govern well, that they would have knowledge, they would have wisdom, they would have discernment. I wanted them to be not to make the decision that I want them to make clearly, but I want them to make the right decision. And so I'm going to trust and hope and pray that in fact occurs, because I'm not God. Newsflash, neither are you. And so anyway, it was frustrating. They heard from students, they heard from student athletes. There are going to be schools that, if this passes, that will not be able to participate in the state playoffs, simply because they have a oh, hey, what's up, Brandon? Got Brandon Goebel coming on. He can confirm. Thank you, Brandon. That was on this one over here, on the YouTubes and I think that was on YouTube. Oh, no, it was on Twitter, or X, or whatever we're calling it. So they had these students who were up there talking, and they're like, listen, we might not even be able to have a team because they rely, these teams are so small. Like, y'all, listen, we had 6 kids for a varsity basketball team, 6 kids. I didn't check their immigration status. I have no idea. I just wanted to get kids who were warm bodies who could play. And we didn't have a JV program at ICS last year. So what's going to happen to these sports that are so small, the lacrosses and field hockeys, and not that lacrosse is a pretty big sport, but you know what I'm saying? The soccers and the baseballs and the softballs and all these sports where maybe they don't have enough for a JV team, and they have 2 kids who really love the sport. And we just told those 2 kids who are F1 visa students they just want to play. We just told them, sorry, you're going to ruin your school's chance at competing for a state championship. I think it's a bad message. I also think it's a bad message to send when the state of Utah is literally at this moment trying to get the Winter Olympics to come to Utah. We're trying to get the world's best athletes to come here, and then we'll turn around and tell them, hey, but your kids can't compete in our state tournaments. It's frustrating. So here's what the rule states. Just so it's not a ban on students. I found this out too. The rule says this: you have to declare before the season starts whether or not you are going to play and compete for a UHSAA state championship. In order to do so, you cannot have any F1 visa students participate in varsity athletics in that sport, period. If you do, then your season's done. At least your playoffs are done. So the beginning of the year, because I was curious about this, You can't play a whole season with, 3 or 4 F1 visa students, and then when the playoffs come around, just bench them and promote 3 or 4 people. You have to declare it at the start of the year and say, "This is what we're gonna say." So that's gonna be a difficult decision, right? I mean, imagine if you have 1 or 2 kids who really, really love that sport. You're gonna have to decide and look them in the eyes and say to them, "Hey, we can't play, we can't compete for a state championship this year if you decide to play." That's a lot, and it just sucks. It just sucks. There's no other way around it. So that's the rule. So the F1 student athlete is able to compete at a sub varsity level. They're able to go independent, which I'm waiting on some confirmation. I don't know what that means for RPI. I don't know specifically what that means for the transfer rules that are in place. Because if you're not going to be governed by UHSAA, then why would you be governed by the transfer rules? They did say that you can compete in region, you just can't compete in the yeah, Tim, strong talent, weak culture. That's right. Um, they did say that you can compete in region, but you just can't compete in state. Well, I'm like, well, what does that even mean, right? Like, what happens if a school plays all their region? Let's say Judge plays in their 3A region, right? And they have a couple of F1 visa students who were there this past year. Let's say they come back and they decide to keep playing and being with their friends and doing all that stuff, and they play in the region and they win a bunch of games. Does that mean that the schools they play, does that not impact their RPI? Does it impact it positively? I don't know this, and I think they got to figure this stuff out here pretty quickly. So I have reached out. I've asked some people some questions on it. I'm waiting to figure that out. Um, so that's the rule in a nutshell, right? F1 visa, if you have them at your school, which by the way, this is something that many people don't know, but F1 visa students are welcome at charter and public schools in the United States. And last I yep, Utah is a state in the United States of America. And so they are also able to participate, but for only 12 months. And so they will now no longer be able to participate without harming their team's chances of competing for a state championship. And that was the thing they kept saying. No, 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 no. We're not saying that they can't compete in varsity athletics. We're just saying that we're going to take away the reason for competition, right? It's like, okay, come on, guys. You're putting a difficult burden on these kids that I think is a bit unnecessary. So they can compete in sub varsity level. The team can go independent. What was the other one? I don't remember. That's right. That's right, Catchy. This is insane. Or independent, sub varsity, or they can just play and they can't go compete in the state tournament. So that's what was passed. The conversation afterwards was, well, we still have to wait for 2/3 of the schools to approve it. Most of the administrators that I spoke with there said they're not hopeful that 1/3 of the schools are going to reject this policy. Now, of course, anything can happen, right? Water gets turned into wine. In case you didn't know that, I know it's Utah, so I apologize, but that was the first miracle: water into wine, and it was consumed by Jesus. So, sorry, I'm sorry, everybody. I can't help myself. So things can happen, right? Miracles can happen. We'll wait and see what that is. I'm not entirely sure when that process is going to happen. There's still some other stuff to get worked out, but those were the two things that were argued, and it was passed almost unanimously. There was one vote that was abstain. I was like, come on, bro, just say no. You don't have to abstain. Just say no. I don't vote for this. Because then, so it wasn't quite unanimous, but it was almost unanimous. So that's what I know about that. If you got any thoughts or any questions, you can drop a comment. I'll try to answer it. I think it's a blow to the state of Utah, to our student athletes, not just the ones who are on an F1 visa, but how is that state championship going to feel if you know that in your sport there were athletes who could have been competing who are not allowed to compete because a bunch of adults sat in a room and said, "Nah, they're too good. They're too good for you, little Johnny. And don't worry, we're gonna take them out of here." Because that's what we want to teach our kids. Everybody, we want to teach our children that whenever they have a problem, they should run to the government. Okay. As you can tell, I'm still a little bit fired up about this. So that's all I got on there. I was going to do a quick little rundown here of some of the. This is a great point from my friend Brandon. He says it perpetuates a Utah cliche that already exists, that people from Utah are always defending themselves against. I totally agree with you, Brandon. It's a whole thing. And listen, this is another soapbox. Maybe I'm not going to talk about the club team. The club teams did great. Everybody is awesome. There's my hot take on club basketball from this past weekend. I think the live period's coming up in a few weeks. Maybe I'll jump in. But I have been keeping track of score or of records in a Excel spreadsheet because that's how I'm built. So Utah Jazz fans, let me speak to you. Or, fans of Utah sports, specifically sports that don't involve primarily people who look like me. I hear this complaint all the time about, if people just knew about Utah, if people just would come here, and then stuff like this happens, and it's like, yeah, maybe they know. maybe they know about Utah, and this is just how it is here. Like, do you realize? Let's see, what do we got here? Don't we want basketball to get better in Utah? Of course we want basketball, Coach. Who do we got here? It's Coach Patton. What's up? What's up, Connor? Of course we want basketball to get better in Utah, right? 100% we want basketball. We want all of our sports, right? Rising tide lifts all boats, or whatever that thing is. And it's not helping anything other than for the kids who are naturalized citizens of the United States to be able to succeed in Utah. That's the only and it only helps them succeed during their high school time. Because I got to tell you something, students, if you're still watching this, then kudos to you. It's 22 minutes and you have the longest attention span of any child your age, right? It only helps you in high school sports, because when you get out of high school, you have to compete against students from all around the world in athletics, if you're lucky enough, in academics to get college admissions. You have to compete with the world in business. You have to compete with the world for jobs. We are not helping anybody here by saying, but in the state of Utah, you don't have to compete with the rest of the world in athletics. It does not help us prepare our kids for the future. I don't think it helps them at all. And so, like Brandon said, it is perpetuating this cliche that exists about Utah, which is that we don't really want people other than the people who are here to be successful. We don't want to bring in people. Now, you might go, "Oh, that's not true." Okay, well, stuff like this perpetuates that. It just, whether you like it or not, it perpetuates it. Right. So don't come and tell me anything about, NBA free agents or whatever, when there's like, "Oh man, nobody wants to sign in Utah. Why don't they like it here?" Well, honestly, it's because of crap like this. It's just like, remember when Donovan got into it about, was it CRT with like a state senator? It's like, what are you guys doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's stuff like this that drives people crazy. I'm an outsider to you. I've lived here for 6 years, but I've lived in California, and I'm from Colorado, the home of the defending world champion Denver Nuggets. And I will tell you what the perception is of Utah is exactly what we're doing here. It's exactly what we're doing here. And we may not like it. And we may be like, they don't know, but maybe they do. Maybe they kind of know. So any other thoughts, questions? I'm happy to wrap this up. Like I said, I'm not feeling super great. I've been going for 25 minutes on my little soapbox rant. Yes. Yeah. Brandon is killing it on, that's right, Nuggets fans, Tim Drisdom. How'd that gentleman sweep feel like with the Lakers? Brandon says they're happy to watch a bunch of Eastern European hockey players, which, congratulations. We got a hockey team coming. As long as there aren't Eastern European hockey players playing against their kids. Yep. That's pretty much what's going on here. So biggest takeaway is everybody is welcome on board the Denver Nuggets bandwagon. There's plenty of room. I started it a long time ago. Come on, just come on. We're kind here. We accept people from every. If you have an F1 student visa, you can come on board the Denver Nuggets bandwagon. That's not the biggest takeaway. The biggest takeaway is, I'll save it. The biggest takeaway is this: transfer rules, I think, are going to be helpful. What do we got here? Every Lakers fan always goes to the 18. You know what? I said defending NBA champions. So the transfer rule, I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be helpful. I think it's going to clarify some stuff. The F1 visa rule, I think, is bad. I think it's going to get changed. I think it's going to have to get changed. I think there's going to be enough people who there's going to be enough problems with it. There's going to be too many problems with it, and we're going to have to make a change to this rule, I suspect. There was an analogy that was used that said, well, I had one of the on the board members said, well, I had a curfew because my sister was always late. And so sometimes the bad actors ruin it for the rest of us. And I said, yeah, but the analogy is more like this. If your sister was late getting home and then your parents told you that you were never allowed to leave the house ever again, or drive or go to school, and you would be homeschooled, but you'd be fed, you'd be able to eat and you'd be able to exercise, but you couldn't leave the house. That's kind of what this feels like. It's just this broad sweeping thing that is skirting the real issue, which is recruitment, right? That's the real issue here. We don't want to be recruiting kids athletically. That's the issue here. It's not the immigration status of our students. So that's all I got. Thanks everybody for joining me. I don't know how to save it. I'll do my best. I'll do my best to save it, but appreciate y'all jumping on. I'm going to end this stream up here, and then